On our wedding anniversary, I waited for 3 hours. The meal sat in the warming oven, repeatedly reheated, until finally, my wife, Isabel Vance, came home. She walked in carrying the scent of a cool, crisp perfume that didn't belong in our house. I knew the fragrance. It was Creed's Silver Mountain Water, William Cole's favorite. Isabel took off her coat, tossing it casually onto the rack in the foyer before walking straight to the table and sitting down across from me. She didn't spare a single glance for the candlelight or the gourmet meal, simply pulling a file from her briefcase and sliding it across the table. About William, I promised I'd give him and his child a family. Her voice was as flat as if she were reading the evening's financial news. Name your price. My gaze shifted from her beautiful, ice-cold face to the document. A few words in bold on the cover felt like frozen needles stabbing into my eyes. Divorce agreement. I didn't feel any pain, just a strange urge to laugh. So this was it. My 7-year marriage, from college sweethearts to supporting her as she built her empire from scratch, to my current role as a trophy husband, all came down to a casual, dismissive name your price. I didn't bother looking at the settlement terms, flipping directly to the last page. Next to the clause stating I would walk away with nothing was a number with so many zeros I couldn't count them all. That was always Isabel's way, measuring everything, including emotions, in dollars. In her eyes, that sum of money was enough to buy out my 7 years of youth, enough to ensure I'd make a graceful exit and clear the way for her and her true love. Isabel, I said, looking up. The candlelight danced in my pupils as I tried to keep my voice perfectly steady. 7 years, and this is how you end it? She leaned back in her chair, her long, slender fingers tapping restlessly on the table, a flicker of impatience in her eyes. Leo, we're both adults. Let's not make this ugly. William can't wait much longer. I've been more than fair to you. More than fair, I repeated under my breath, a bitter taste filling my mouth. I remembered back in college when she'd stood in the rain all night outside the library just to buy me a ticket to a sold-out classical music concert. I remembered in the early days of her startup, when we were crammed into a tiny studio apartment, sharing a single bowl of instant ramen. She swore to me then that one day, she'd have me living in the best house in the world. She did it. The villa we lived in was worth tens of millions, with a sweeping river view right outside our window. But I felt like I was living in a gilded cage that grew colder by the day. She came home less and less, her perfume changing with the seasons. The only time I ever saw her looking vibrant and in her element was in interviews for magazines like Forbes. And then there was William Cole, my college classmate. The man who was always trying to copy my style while competing with me at every turn. I once thought it was just a youthful rivalry, but I never imagined he would scheme his way into becoming the gravedigger of my marriage. I took a deep breath, forcing down the emotions churning inside me. For a woman who had already made up her mind to leave, any emotional outburst would only make me look cheap and ridiculous. I picked up the red wine from the table, poured myself half a glass, and then poured her half a glass as well. Fine, I said. I'll agree to the divorce. Isabel's eyebrows shot up slightly, as if surprised by how easily I'd caved. I raised my glass, toasting her and the chilling silence that filled the room. But before I sign, have one last meal with me. After all, today is our last wedding anniversary. She was quiet for a moment before finally lifting her glass. The meal was eaten in suffocating silence. The pastry on the beef Wellington was still perfectly crisp, the filet tender and juicy, but I couldn't taste a thing. I looked at the woman across from me. She was once the dream of my entire youth, the faith I was willing to sacrifice my own career for, content to be the pillar supporting her from behind. But now, she sat right there, her face the same, but her soul long gone. After dinner, I cleared the plates and brewed her a cup of her favorite oolong tea. The steam rose in fragrant wisps, blurring her sharp, cold features. Isabel, when we divorce, I don't want anything. I looked her straight in the eye and said, word for word, the house, the cars, the savings, leave it all for you and William. I only have one condition. Her hand, holding the teacup, paused. She looked up at me, a hint of inquiry in her eyes. What condition? I just want to be free, I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt a weight lift off me. Yes, not revenge, not entanglement, just freedom. Freedom from this marriage that was a marriage in name only, freedom from the endless waiting and self-doubt. Isabel didn't seem to understand, or maybe she just didn't believe it. In her world, a divorce was about fighting for the biggest settlement, securing your future. Someone like me who wanted nothing was unthinkable. "Are you sure?" she asked, her tone laced with a condescending superiority. "Leo, don't be childish. Take the money. At least it will ensure you and Noah can live comfortably." She mentioned Noah, our 5-year-old son. It was the first time she had brought him up all night. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, the pain so sharp I could hardly breathe. But my face remained calm. I even managed to pull my lips into a smile. "That won't be necessary," I said. "I'll take care of Noah." I stood up, walked to the study, and took out my Mont Blanc fountain pen. I uncapped it and, without a moment's hesitation, signed my name at the end of the agreement. Leo Hayes. The script was clean and elegant, yet carried an unmistakable force of finality. Then, I pushed the signed agreement back across the table to her. "Now it's your turn." Isabel looked from the document to me, her expression complex. Perhaps in her mind, she had won this battle too easily. She hadn't even had a chance to deploy her Plan B or Plan C. She didn't hesitate any longer, picking up the pen and quickly signing her name. Her signature, as elegant and sharp as she was always so confident, so bold. After signing, she stood up, buttoned her blazer, and walked away without another glance in my direction. No goodbye, no hug, not even a simple take care. The door clicked shut, and all my warmth, all my history, was locked outside. I stood in the vast, empty living room, watching the flickering candlelight on the table, and was struck by the bitter irony of it all. I walked silently to my study, pulled another sheet of paper from a folder I had prepared long ago, took out my phone, and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Hello, David? It's Leo." "Yes," she signed it. "Good. We can move forward with the plan." Hanging up, I walked to the window and watched as Isabel's car sped away, disappearing into the city's neon glow. I gently stroked the paper in my hand. Printed on it in clear, bold letters were the words: "Supplemental agreement regarding the custody of the marital child, Noah Vance." After Isabel left, the villa plunged into a dead silence. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering city lights, feeling like a lost soul forgotten by the world. But that feeling lasted only a few minutes before it was replaced by an unprecedented sense of calm. I knew that from this night on, I was no longer Isabel Vance's husband, waiting for his wife to come home. I was just Leo Hayes, a father responsible for his own future and his son's. I went back to the study and locked the signed divorce agreement in the safe. Then I took the supplemental custody agreement, along with my son's passport, my passport, and a stack of other prepared documents, and placed them all in a manila envelope. Once that was done, I went upstairs and gently pushed open the door to Noah's room. The little guy was sound asleep, his long eyelashes like tiny brushes casting soft shadows on his cheeks. He was clutching a slightly worn teddy bear, the one I had hand-sewn for him on his 3rd birthday. Isabel hadn't been there that day. She said she had an important international conference call. I later found out she had gone to Milan Design Week with William. I sat on the edge of his bed, gently stroking Noah's soft hair. My heart felt like it was soaking in warm water, both aching and soft. This child was the only gift from my 7-year marriage. The next morning, I made Noah breakfast as usual: milk, cereal, and his favorite strawberries. Watching his happy, satisfied little face, the last shred of hesitation in my heart vanished. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was my lawyer, David Lee. He was a senior from my university and one of the top family law attorneys in the country. The moment I decided to get a divorce, he was the first person I thought of. "I'm ready," David said, pushing up the gold-rimmed glasses on his nose, his voice steady. I nodded and handed him the manila envelope. "She signed it last night. She has no idea." David took the documents, quickly scanned them, and handed me a pen. Sign here. Leo, once you sign this, there's no turning back. I looked at the supplemental agreement regarding the custody of the marital child, Noah Vance. In the most rigorous legal terms, it clearly stated, the parties, through friendly negotiation, mutually agree that sole legal and physical custody of the marital child, Noah Vance, shall be granted to the father, Leo Hayes. The mother, Isabel Vance, voluntarily relinquishes all rights to custody, visitation, and guardianship of Noah Vance. This was my real condition. Without the slightest hesitation, I signed my name. Just as I was about to hand the documents back to David, my phone rang. It was Isabel. My heart skipped a beat as I saw her name flash across the screen. I motioned for David to wait, then answered the call and put it on speaker. Leo Hayes, what the hell are you trying to pull? Isabel's voice, tight with suppressed anger, came through the phone. I feigned confusion. What do you mean? Didn't we already agree on everything? Agree? What's this about you sending your lawyer to see my lawyer? And what's this about notarizing assets? Didn't you say you didn't want anything? Are you backing out now? Her voice was dripping with contempt and disdain. I laughed coldly to myself. Isabel, you're still so arrogant. I really don't want anything, I said calmly. I sent David over just to ensure our agreement is legally binding and to avoid any future disputes. You're so busy, I didn't want to bother you with trivial matters. My thoughtful explanation clearly left Isabel speechless. She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her tone had softened, though it still carried a condescending edge. Fine. Leo, I expect you to keep your word and not pull any stunts. I've already had my finance department wire the money to your account. It's enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. That's all. The line went dead. David looked at me with a mixture of pity and admiration. She didn't even ask what the notarization was about. She wouldn't, I said, a bitter smile touching my lips. In her world, I had nothing besides money and our son. She naturally assumed everything I was doing was for money, and I used that very arrogance and condescension against her. I handed the signed supplemental agreement and the other documents to David. David, I'm counting on you for the rest. Don't worry, he said with a solemn nod. I'll get everything processed as quickly as possible. The plane tickets and arrangements in Switzerland are all set. You can leave whenever you're ready. After seeing David off, I started packing. There wasn't much to take. Everything in this mansion was branded with the identity of Isabel Vance's husband, but there was no trace of Leo Hayes. The trophy from the curating award I won in college was collecting dust in a corner of the storage room. The design sketches I'd drawn by hand were stuffed carelessly in a study drawer, ignored by everyone. I only took a few of Noah's favorite toys, some of our photos together, and the first gift Isabel ever gave me, which I kept hidden in the depths of my jewelry box, a pendant made from a strange, unique stone she'd found on a beach. It was worthless, but it was once my most treasured possession. I didn't touch anything else, including the massive sum Isabel had wired to my account. I didn't take a single cent. I left a note and a generous severance package for our nanny, Mrs. Davis. She had watched Noah grow up and was the only person in this house who had treated me with genuine kindness. I didn't want to drag her into this. In the evening, I got a call from David. Leo, it's all done. The legally binding, notarized document is in effect. Isabel's lawyer has confirmed that she herself has no objection to the voluntary relinquishment of custody clause. Thank you, David. I owe you one, I said, my voice a bit hoarse. Of course. Have a safe trip, and let me know when you land in Switzerland. A whole new world is waiting for you there. After hanging up, I took one last look at the house I had lived in for 5 years. The setting sun cast long, mottled shadows on the floor through the enormous windows. This place once held all my beautiful dreams of love and family, but now it was nothing but a pile of cold, broken shards. I felt no attachment. Cradling a sleeping Noah, I pulled a single small suitcase behind me and walked out the door without a second thought. In the taxi on the way to the airport, I sent Isabel one last text message. Goodbye, Isabel. I wish you and William a happily ever after. Then I blocked her number. Outside the car window, the city lights blurred and receded. I looked at Noah's peaceful, sleeping face in my arms, and a sense of calm washed over me. The night before I decided to leave, the same night Isabel signed that supplemental agreement, I did something that surprised both her and myself. Cooked. I prepared a lavish Last Supper for her. In the later years of our marriage, this was almost unthinkable. Ever since Isabel's career took off, our kitchen had become the exclusive domain of Michelin-starred chefs, while I was molded into the perfect accessory, a handsome, well-dressed partner meant to smile by her side at high-end galas. She had told me more than once, "Leo, you don't need to do these things. Your hands are for wearing a Patek Philippe and running an art gallery, not for getting greasy in the kitchen." At the time, I naively thought it was her way of caring for me. Only later did I realize she just needed an Isabel Vance's husband who fit her status, an elegant, sophisticated symbol, devoid of any domesticity. The Leo Hayes who was once willing to cook for her had long been erased from her blueprint. So when Isabel saw the dining table laid out with several of her favorite dishes, duck à l'orange, braised short ribs, and a carefully prepared lobster bisque, a flicker of surprise crossed her face. "You made this?" she asked, her tone inquisitive. "Yes," I said, ladling a bowl of bisque for her and placing it in front of her. My voice was as calm as if I were discussing the weather. "I figured we might not have many chances to eat together again. Let's just call it an amicable parting." She didn't say anything, just quietly accepted the bowl. We ate that meal in unusual silence, the only sounds being the clinking of silverware and soft chewing. I didn't bring up the divorce again, nor did I mention William. Instead, like an old friend, I started talking about our college days. Remember our junior year, when we entered the National Collegiate Art Curation Competition? I swirled the red wine in my glass, the candlelight creating a mesmerizing glow. We were broke back then, staying in the cheapest motels and eating the simplest takeout to save money. You spent several all-nighters in the library helping me with research, and you ended up falling asleep right at the desk. Isabel's hand, holding her knife and fork, paused. She looked up at me, a complex emotion I hadn't seen in a long time flickering in her eyes. "Of course I remember," she said softly. "You won the gold medal in the end." "We won the gold medal," I corrected her. "I never could have completed that project without you. That was the first major award of my life and the starting point of my career as a curator. I had thought it would be the beginning of our shared dream." But later, her dream grew bigger and bigger, large enough to swallow the whole world, while my dream was confined by her to the four walls of this mansion. "Back then, you even said you'd invest in me, help me open the top art gallery in the country," I said with a faint, self-deprecating smile.
Isabel zgaze flickered, avoiding mine.
"The company was just starting out, I was too busy," she explained vaguely. I knew it was just an excuse. It wasn't that she didn't have time, it was that she didn't want me back in that world. She needed a husband who was completely dependent on her, not a partner with his own career and his own light. "Isabel," I said, putting down my wine glass and looking at her seriously, "do you know why I fell in love with you?" She didn't answer, just watched me, waiting. "It wasn't because of how much money you made later, or because of how beautiful you are. It was because when everyone else thought my wild ideas were just crazy talk, you were the only one who would listen intently and then tell me, 'Leo, you have a light in your eyes. Don't ever let it go out.'" My voice caught, but I forced myself to remain calm. "But in the end, the person who put out that light was also you." Isabel's breath hitched. She seemed to want to say something, but ultimately just took a silent sip of her wine. Maybe my words had struck a chord, or maybe the atmosphere of this farewell dinner was too somber. She didn't dismiss me with her usual "you're overthinking things again." "Leo, I'm sorry," she finally rasped out, the words coming far too late. I shook my head. "It doesn't matter anymore." It was true. It didn't matter. Once you've collected enough disappointment, no apology can fix it. "I might take Noah to Switzerland for a while next week," I mentioned, as if it were an afterthought. "He's been having this persistent cough lately. The doctor thinks it might be allergic asthma, so a change of scenery might help." "Switzerland?" Isabel frowned. "You don't know anyone there. Can you manage with a child all by yourself?" "It's fine. A college friend of mine settled there." She can help out, I said lightly. She just grunted in response and didn't ask any more questions. She probably thought it was just a typical post-divorce healing trip. She would never imagine it was a one-way migration. At the end of the meal, I handed her a stack of miscellaneous household documents, with the supplemental agreement she had already signed mixed in. These are some utility bills and the renewal form for Noah's insurance. Have your assistant take care of them. I pointed to the agreement on top. Oh, and this is a permission slip for one of Noah's kindergarten activities. It needs a parent's signature. Could you sign it too? Isabel was on an important work call at that moment. While speaking fluent English into her phone, she impatiently took the stack of papers from me. Without even looking, she flipped to the last page and, at the signature line, dashed off her elegant, sharp signature. In that instant, watching her focused, indifferent profile, the last shred of warmth in my heart completely vanished. What was I still hoping for from a woman who couldn't even be bothered to glance at a document concerning her own son's custody? She finished her call, tossed the signed papers on the table, and stood up abruptly. I have another meeting at the office. I have to go. She walked to the foyer, put on her coat, and paused with her hand on the doorknob. She looked back at me, her expression complicated. Leo, take care of yourself. It was the only thing she said all night that carried any hint of concern. I didn't answer, just watched her silently. The door opened, then closed. I sat alone at the empty dining table, looking at the leftover food and the document that would decide the fate of the rest of my life. And suddenly, I laughed. The morning after Isabel left, sunlight streamed through the blinds, cutting bright stripes across the floor. I woke up early, made breakfast for Noah, and placed our few pieces of luggage by the door. Everything was proceeding exactly as I had planned, orderly and calm. At 9 a.m., Isabel's assistant, a young man named Chris, called, his voice respectful. Sir, Ms. Vance asked me to inquire when it would be convenient for you to move out. Mr. Cole will be moving in today, and Ms. Vance was hoping you wouldn't run into each other to avoid any awkwardness. I held the phone, listening to his words, my heart turning to ice. She couldn't even wait a single day before moving her new man in. I understand, I said, taking a deep breath to keep my voice as steady as possible. Tell her I'll be gone before noon. She doesn't need to worry. I won't make things difficult for her. After hanging up, I looked at Noah, who was sitting in the living room, engrossed in building with his blocks. The last flicker of doubt in my heart was extinguished. This place was no longer our home. I knelt and pulled Noah into my arms. Noah, how about Daddy takes you to a really fun place? It has huge, snowy mountains and little trains, just like in a fairy tale. Noah looked up, his big, grape-like eyes shining with curiosity. Really? Is Mommy coming with us? My heart clenched painfully. Mommy has to work. She's very, very busy. I forced a smile and kissed his forehead. When Mommy isn't so busy, she'll come find us. The lie tasted like acid in my mouth, but I had no choice. I couldn't let a 5-year-old boy bear the burden of the adult world's cruelty and betrayal. At 10:30, a nondescript black SUV pulled up to the villa's entrance. David had arranged it for me. It would take us directly to the airport's VIP terminal. I took Noah's hand, pulled our small suitcase behind me, and walked out of the house I once thought I would live in for the rest of my life. The moment the door closed behind me, I didn't look back. The car drove smoothly away from the wealthy neighborhood, leaving the exquisite, cold architecture far behind. Meanwhile, in Isabel's office, she was triumphantly leading a video conference with her team, planning a multi-billion-dollar merger. During a break, Chris knocked and entered, reporting in a low voice, Ms. Vance, he's moved out. Everything went smoothly. Isabel nodded, a satisfied expression on her face. In her mind, Leo's sensible departure had saved her a lot of unnecessary trouble. She even felt a little smug, certain that her decision to rip off the Band-Aid had been absolutely correct. Good, she said with a wave of her hand. Have the cleaning service go over this afternoon and get rid of all his things. And redecorate the nursery, change it to a style William likes. She paused, then added, "Oh, and tell William he can just move in tonight. I'll be home early." She couldn't wait to start building a new nest with her new partner. On the other end of the line, William was ecstatic when he got the news. He immediately called his friends and headed straight for the luxury department stores to outfit himself for his new role as Lord of the Manor. "See? I told you Isabel loves me most," he boasted, swiping the black card Isabel had given him. "That Leo guy was just for show. Now he has to step aside for me, doesn't he?" Everyone was basking in their own victory and joy. No one knew that at that very moment, I was sitting in the VIP lounge at Zurich International Airport, holding my son and sipping a warm latte. It was Noah's first time on a plane, and he was beside himself with excitement. His little face was pressed against the massive window, watching the planes take off and land, letting out gasps of wonder. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a message from David. "The notarized documents have been sent via encrypted email to the law firm in Switzerland. Your new identification and bank accounts have all been activated. Leo, from now on, you are free." I read the words and my eyes welled up. Free. Such a luxurious, precious word. I deleted every contact and photo related to Isabel from my phone, leaving only a single picture of the three of us at the hospital right after Noah was born. In the photo, Isabel was holding tiny Noah, a gentle smile on her face, while I leaned against her, my eyes shining with happiness. I once thought that was forever. Looking back, it was just a self-deceiving fantasy. I deleted that photo too. Let the past die. Ladies and gentlemen, Flight LX-197 to Zurich is now boarding. A sweet voice announced over the intercom. I stood up and took Noah's hand. "Noah, let's go." "Daddy, where are we going?" "We're gonna rebuild our Rome." I looked at him as the plane outside slowly taxied, then accelerated. Finally, I held Noah's hand as the city below us grew smaller and smaller, blurring into a sea of glittering lights. It took Isabel 3 days to realize something was wrong. For those 3 days, she was on top of the world. With her cold, aloof husband gone, she had the warm and attentive William at home, reigniting a passion she hadn't felt in years. William did everything to please her, waiting on her hand and foot. He had redecorated the house, filling it with traces of love. She was very satisfied. She felt this was the life she wanted: domestic warmth, adoring eyes, and a child who needed her protection. As for Leo and Noah, she thought of them occasionally, but the thoughts were quickly drowned out by William's tender affections. She figured Leo had probably taken the boy somewhere to lick his wounds. Once he'd spent all the money and come to his senses, he would contact her. Then she, as the victor, could bestow some charitable concern upon him, and her duty would be done. She hadn't even bothered to call Noah once. The child was young. She reasoned as long as he was with his father and had money, he wouldn't suffer. However, her self-assured peace was shattered on the afternoon of the 3rd day by a phone call. It was from the nanny, Mrs. Davis. I had let her go, but Isabel, thinking she was experienced with Noah, had hired her back. "Ms. Vance," Mrs. Davis said, her voice tinged with confusion and anxiety, "are you sure you want to completely redecorate the young master's room?" Isabel was at a baby boutique with William, picking out gifts for William's child. Hearing this, she frowned impatiently. "Of course. Is there a problem?" "But the young master didn't take any of his things with him," Mrs. Davis said, her voice growing more urgent. "All his little clothes, his toys, and his favorite storybooks are still here. Mr. Hayes left in such a hurry, with just one small suitcase. If he didn't take these things, what will the young master use in Switzerland?" "What Switzerland?" Isabel's mind went blank, as if she'd been hit over the head with a club. "Switzerland," Mrs. Davis said, as if it were obvious. "Didn't Mr. Hayes take the young master to live in Switzerland? He wrote it all in the letter he left for me. He said the air there is better for the young master's asthma, and he also said you had already agreed and given him full custody, so he could start a new life there with a clear conscience." "Live there? Custody?" Isabel's face turned deathly pale. Her hand clutched the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "What did you say? Say that again," she practically roared. William, standing beside her, jumped in fright. Isabel, what's wrong? Isabel spoke into the phone, her voice a low growl. The letter he left. Where is it? It's on the table in my room. Isabel hung up before Mrs. Davis could finish. Like a maddened lioness, she bolted out of the store, jumped into her car, and floored it, racing home. She ran countless red lights, the car's engine screaming. Her mind was in chaos, Mrs. Davis's words echoing like a curse. Live there, custody, you agreed.
Impossible.
How could Leo dare? How dare he take her son away without her permission? She stormed into the villa, not even bothering to change her shoes, and ran straight for the nanny's room. Mrs. Davis, terrified by her appearance, shakily pointed to an envelope on the table. Isabel snatched it, tore it open violently, and saw Leo's neat handwriting in the farewell letter he'd left for the nanny. In it, he thanked Mrs. Davis for her years of care and briefly explained his decision to take Noah to live in Switzerland. At the end of the letter was a sentence that sent a chill down her spine, plunging her into an icy abyss. Isabel is very busy with work. We have divorced by mutual agreement, and she has also agreed to grant me full custody of Noah. Please do not trouble yourself with our affairs any longer. Isabel's hand trembled like a leaf in the wind, and the letter fluttered from her grasp. She scrambled madly into her own study, frantically digging through the pile of documents she had carelessly tossed in a corner. Finally, she found it, the supplemental agreement regarding the custody of the marital child, Noah Vance, signed with her own name. When she finally read the black and white print, the clauses written in the most rigorous legal terms, her entire world collapsed in an instant. The mother, Isabel Vance, voluntarily relinquishes all rights to custody, visitation, and guardianship of Noah Vance. Voluntarily relinquishes. She remembered. That night, Leo had calmly handed her this document mixed in with a stack of bills. She had been on the phone, annoyed and distracted, and had signed it without a second thought. She thought it was some insignificant permission slip for kindergarten. So he had been laying his trap from the very beginning. He had used his calm and his intellect to set the perfect snare for her. And she, like an arrogant fool, had personally signed the contract that sent her own son away. Leo Hayes. A heart-wrenching roar echoed through the entire villa. She grabbed her phone from the desk and frantically dialed the number she knew by heart. We're sorry. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. The cold, mechanical voice was like a series of daggers, stabbing her heart over and over again. She went berserk, sweeping everything off her desk, the computer, the files, the pen holder. They crashed to the floor, shattering into a million pieces, just like her heart. William had just caught up to her. Seeing the wreckage in the study and Isabel's complete breakdown, he turned pale. Isabel, what's wrong? What happened? Isabel whipped her head around, her bloodshot eyes glaring at him, looking like she wanted to tear him apart. Get out, she hissed through her teeth. All of you, get out. She had never looked at him with such terrifying eyes. William stumbled backward, not daring to say another word, and fled in a panic. In the empty study, only Isabel's heavy, ragged breathing remained. She slid weakly to the floor, her back against the cold desk, her hands digging painfully into her hair. She had lost. Utterly and completely. She thought she had been in control of everything, only to be played by the man she despised the most. He had taken nothing, yet he had taken the one thing in her life that could not be measured by money, the most important thing, her son. A strangled, animalistic sob escaped Isabel's throat. In that moment, she finally, truly understood what she had lost. William began his life as the man of the house in a state of extreme terror and unease. After her breakdown that day, Isabel became a completely different person. She was no longer the confident, all-powerful queen of finance, but a restless, irritable beast trapped in a cage. She locked herself in the study, smoking and drinking day and night. The door remained shut, and no one was allowed to enter. She began a frantic search, leveraging all her connections and resources to find Leo and Noah. She sent people to every city in Switzerland, casting a wide net in an attempt to find the vanished father and son. But Leo had disappeared as if he had evaporated into thin air. The atmosphere in the house was so oppressive it was hard to breathe. William tried his best to play the part of a caring partner. He cooked Isabel's favorite meals every day, but when he brought the food to the study door and gently pleaded with her to eat, he was met with only icy silence. The food would grow cold and he would take it away, untouched. He started redecorating, trying to erase every trace of Leo. He replaced the cool-toned abstract painting in the living room with a garish portrait of roses. He put away the inscrutable art pieces and replaced them with the blingy crystal ornaments he preferred. He thought this would make the house his territory. However, when he directed workers to replace the minimalist walnut bed in the master bedroom, a piece Leo had designed himself, the study door was violently thrown open. Isabel stormed out like a hurricane, eyes bloodshot and reeking of alcohol. She grabbed one of the workers by the collar. "Who told you to touch this bed?" She shrieked, her voice as raw as sandpaper. The workers were terrified, waving their hands frantically. It was Mr. Cole. Isabel's head snapped toward William, her eyes like shards of ice, pinning him to the spot. The look was so alien, so terrifying, as if she were staring at a mortal enemy. "I'm warning you," she said, each word squeezed through her teeth. "Don't you dare touch his things. Don't you touch a single thing in this house that he has ever touched." The blood drained from William's face. He couldn't understand. Didn't she stop loving Leo? Didn't she divorce him for his sake? Why was she now cherishing everything that man had left behind? "Isabel," he whimpered, his lower lip trembling and his eyes welling up with tears. I wanted to make the house feel a little warmer. And I hoped you could turn a new page." "A new page?" The words seemed to trigger something in Isabel, and she exploded like a cornered animal. She let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Yes, a new page. I lost my own son for you and your so-called child. William, you had better pray that everything you told me is true, because if it's not—" She didn't finish the sentence, but the unspoken threat coiled around William's heart like a venomous snake, making him shudder. From that day on, William didn't dare touch anything in the house. He was an intruder in another man's territory, living awkwardly and humbly in a space saturated with another man's presence. Noah's crooked crayon drawing still hung on the living room wall, Leo's favorite art books still lined the shelves, and even the walk-in closet still held a few of Leo's minimalist, expensive coats that he hadn't had time to pack. Leo was gone, but his ghost was everywhere. It haunted every corner of the mansion, a constant reminder to William, "You are just a replacement." William started suffering from insomnia and nightmares. He dreamt that Leo came back, dressed in an elegant white suit, a triumphant smile on his face, and whispered, "This was never your home." He would wake up in a cold sweat, looking at the woman beside him, ravaged by alcohol and regret. He began to doubt his choices for the first time. Isabel's search hit a dead end in the first few days. Leo's ability to cover his tracks was far beyond her imagination. She checked every departure record. All she knew was that he had flown to Zurich. But once he landed, he and Noah had vanished like a drop of water in the ocean. He hadn't used any bank cards linked to her, nor had he checked into any hotel that could be traced with his old identity. For the first time, Isabel felt powerless. In the world she had built with money and power, she had always been invincible. But now, she was like a soldier stripped of all her weapons, left to scream helplessly in place. Just as she was at her wit's end, an unexpected visitor arrived, plunging her already chaotic life into further turmoil with a final, devastating blow. It was her mother, Mrs. Vance. The matriarch of the Vance group, she was a formidable, shrewd woman with an iron grip on her daughter. She had never been fond of Leo, her son-in-law who, in her eyes, had nothing to offer but good looks. She saw Leo's artistic sensibilities and lofty ideals as a waste of time. In contrast, the sweet-talking, sycophantic William, with his pitiable child in tow, seemed to pique her curiosity. So when Isabel told her about the divorce, she hadn't objected. She had come today to personally inspect the man who had so thoroughly captivated her daughter. "Isabel, what on earth has happened to you?" Mrs. Vance said, frowning as she took in her disheveled, alcohol-soaked daughter and the trashed study. It was just a divorce. Is it worth all this drama? Let Leo go. I never liked him anyway. Isabel ignored her, waving a dismissive hand for her to leave. But Mrs. Vance persisted, seating herself on the sofa and casting a critical eye over the trembling William. You must be William Cole, she said, her tone appraising as she looked him up and down. I hear you have a child and have had a difficult time on your own. Isabel has a soft heart, it's understandable she'd want to help you. William quickly lowered his head, feigning meekness.
Hello, Mom.
Isabel is just very kind. Mrs. Vance nodded. Then her tone shifted. However, in the Vance family, we like to have all the facts straight. I had someone look into you. She pulled a manila envelope from her Hermes bag and tossed it onto the coffee table. William's face went white when he saw the envelope. That's not necessary, ma'am, he stammered, waving his hands frantically. My situation, I've told Isabel everything. Have you? Mrs. Vance said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Because what I found seems to differ from what you've said. A cold sweat broke out on William's forehead. His backstory was a fabrication. He had told Isabel he was fleeing an abusive ex-girlfriend, Shelley, with his child, a boy he called Noah as well. He thought that if he could just get Isabel to divorce Leo and secure his own position, the lie would hold. He never dreamed Mrs. Vance would pull a stunt like this. The air in the living room grew thick enough to cut with a knife. William's heart pounded like a drum. His palms were slick with sweat, and a single thought screamed in his mind. It's over. It's all over. Isabel, lost in the pain of losing her son, was oblivious to the drama. Mom, can you not add to the chaos right now? She said impatiently. I'm not in the mood. I'm adding to the chaos? Mrs. Vance's voice rose. I'm trying to keep you from getting conned out of your entire fortune. You sit down and listen. We are getting to the bottom of this today. Mrs. Vance opened the envelope and slammed a stack of photos and documents onto the table. Mr. Cole, you said your ex-girlfriend Shelley was abusive, and you left her to protect your child, correct? Then can you explain why someone took a photo of the two of you enjoying an intimate dinner at a high-end restaurant just last week? You said you were desperate and penniless. Then what about this $50,000 transfer into your account? Oh, I checked. The sender was none other than your abusive ex-girlfriend, Shelley, and your child. You told Isabel he has a congenital heart defect and needs a fortune for surgery. But the hospital records I obtained show he's perfectly healthy. He rarely even catches a cold. With every accusation Mrs. Vance uttered, William's face grew paler. Finally, he collapsed onto the sofa, ashen-faced. The words were like a series of bombs, detonating in the living room. Isabel slowly lifted her head, and the unfocused glaze in her eyes sharpened into a terrifying light. She stared at the trembling, defeated man on the sofa, and a smile, uglier than any cry, spread across her face. A scam. It was all a scam from beginning to end. A meticulously designed trap laid for her by the man she loved most. For this scam, she had personally destroyed her own family. For this scam, she had personally signed away custody of her own son. For this scam, she had become a complete and utter fool. Isabel suddenly burst into laughter, laughing until tears streamed down her face. The sound was shrill and desperate, the final wail of a dying beast. As she laughed, she slowly rose to her feet and walked, step by step, toward the man who was now petrified with fear. William Cole, she said, her voice as light as a whisper but as cold as ice, you played a very, very good game. While Isabel's world was falling apart, mine was being slowly rebuilt under the Swiss sun. Winters in Zurich are cold but bright. The sun scattered like crushed diamonds across the sparkling surface of Lake Zurich. In the distance, the snow-capped Alps stood like a silver dragon, silently guarding the ancient, tranquil city. It was just as beautiful as I remembered. I settled with Noah in an apartment by the lake. It wasn't large, but it was warm and comfortable, with huge floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water and mountains. Every morning, I woke to the sound of seagulls, and when I opened the window, I could breathe in the crisp air, tinged with the scent of grass and water. Noah's asthma never acted up here. He quickly adapted to the new environment, running and laughing on the lawn in front of our building like a happy little bird. His face was once again filled with the carefree joy I had missed for so long. Seeing him so happy, I knew I had made the right choice. On our third day, I contacted my old friend, Vivian Lin. She wasn't just a friend from my university days, she was my best friend and my former curating partner. We had won that gold medal together and once dreamed of changing the contemporary art scene back home. Later, she returned to Switzerland for family reasons, inheriting her family's gallery and art foundation, while I married Isabel and put my dreams on a shelf. We hadn't been in close contact over the years, but our bond had never faded. When I told her I was divorced and had come to Switzerland with my son, she didn't ask a single question. She just said, in her usual gentle voice, "Welcome home, Leo. Whatever you need, just ask." Home. Hearing that word, my eyes nearly welled up. I didn't stand on ceremony with her. I needed a job, I needed to rebuild my social circle, and I needed to get on my feet in this new country as quickly as possible. Vivian gave me her full support. She not only helped me secure a residency permit, but also gave me control of an independent wing of her gallery. "This will be your studio from now on," she said with a smile, leading me through the bright, airy space filled with classical charm. "You can curate any exhibition you want, according to your own vision. Funding, connections, I'll back you all the way." I looked into her warm eyes, my heart filled with gratitude. "Vivian, thank you." "There's no need for thanks between us," she said, gently patting my shoulder. "I just don't want to see that light go out again." Her words were like a key, unlocking a door in my heart that had been sealed for years. She was right. That light could not go out again. I spent 2 weeks transforming the space into a unique art studio. I named it the Vista, a name signifying a broad, sweeping view. I hoped it would become a bridge connecting the past and the future, the East and the West. For the studio's inaugural project, I curated a small auction titled Rebirth. The pieces were from my private collection of works by contemporary young artists, along with a few of my own designs. I sent out invitations to local Zurich art critics, curators, and some of Vivian's friends. On the day of the auction, I wore a custom-tailored tunic suit of black velvet, with silver thread bamboo leaves embroidered on the collar and cuffs, elegant and refined. I stood on the stage using fluent English to introduce the stories and concepts behind each piece. In that moment, I felt alive again. The quiet, cautious husband of Isabel Vance was finally dead. In his place stood Leo Hayes, the confident, eloquent curator, back in the spotlight. The auction was a great success. Every piece sold for far more than expected. A pair of cufflinks I designed, titled Chrysalis, was bought by a mysterious bidder for 300,000 euros. When the auctioneer's hammer fell, the room erupted in applause. I stood on the stage, looking at the admiring faces in the audience, my eyes slightly moist. Vivian came to my side and handed me a glass of champagne. "Congratulations, Leo," she whispered. "You've laid the first stone of your Rome." I took the glass and clinked it gently against hers. To Rebirth. At the dinner that followed, Noah, dressed in a handsome little suit, followed Vivian around like a tiny gentleman. He could already greet the guests in simple German and French. Vivian treated him like her own nephew, patient and gentle. Noah adored her, constantly calling her Auntie Vivian. Watching the two of them together, my heart warmed. Perhaps leaving that house of lies and betrayal was a blessing for Noah, too. He could grow up in a healthier, purer environment and learn how to love and trust again. And I could finally let go of all my pretenses and defenses and start living for myself again. Life in Switzerland was peaceful and fulfilling. My studio, the Vista, gradually made a name for itself in Zurich's art scene. The exhibitions I curated received positive reviews. I started painting again, designing jewelry. The creative urges I had suppressed for so long erupted like a volcano. I was busy but happy. The best part of my day was picking Noah up from kindergarten. In the bilingual environment, his linguistic talents blossomed, and he could now switch fluently between Mandarin, German, and French. He became more outgoing and made many friends from different backgrounds. After school, we would go to the lake to feed the swans or have hot chocolate in a small cabin on the mountain. On weekends, Vivian would take us skiing in the Alps or to a concert in Lucerne. Life felt like a gentle, flowing poem. As for Isabel, I had almost forgotten she existed. I had blocked all her contact information and never asked my friends back home about her. In my mind, she was a closed chapter in my life, one filled with typos and errors. However, 2 months after I arrived in Switzerland, I received an email forwarded from David. The subject line read, "Leo, where the hell are you?" The sender was Isabel. David had added a note at the beginning. "Leo, Isabel found my firm's public email address and has been sending these. I didn't want to bother you, but she's been at it almost every day for the past 2 months, and the content is getting more intense. I'm worried she might do something irrational. I thought you should know." I hesitated for a moment, then opened the email. It was a letter filled with rage and accusations. "Leo Hayes, you have a heart of stone. How dare you take Noah? He is my son. You used such a despicable trick to make me sign that document. You are a monster. I'm telling you, I don't care where you are. I will find you, and you will give me back my son." The letter ended with a string of exclamation points, so forceful I could almost see her face, twisted with rage. I dragged the email to the trash without a flicker of emotion. From that day on, I received forwarded emails from Isabel every couple of days. The content began to change subtly. The initial anger and threats gave way to questions and confusion. Why? What did I ever do to you? I gave you the best life, a life without any worries. Why did you still betray me? Was it because of William? I admit I was wrong, but what successful woman doesn't have a few admirers? As my husband, why couldn't you be a little more understanding? Reading that, I let out a cold laugh. Understanding. There it was again. In her world, a man's pain and dignity could be easily dismissed with the word understanding. I still didn't reply. I just deleted it. After some time, the tone of the emails shifted again, to pleading and remorse. "Leo, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I found out everything. William was a complete fraud, a scam he designed from the very beginning. I've cut ties with him completely, thrown him out. I was an idiot. I was blind to believe him and to hurt you and Noah. Please come back. If you come back, I'll do anything. We can get remarried. I'll give you half of my company shares. Leo, I miss Noah. I'm going crazy. I can't sleep at night. Every time I close my eyes, I see his smiling face. I can't even go into his room anymore. I'm afraid I'll lose my mind. Please, just let me see him. Just once. A video call is fine. I'm begging you." Her words grew more and more desperate, more pained. I could almost picture the once invincible woman, pecking out these regret-filled words night after night. But my heart was like still water. It wasn't that I was unmoved, it was that I was long past the stage where I needed her apologies. It was like a shattered mirror. Even if you glue it back together with the best adhesive, the cracks will always be there. And I had already swept the pieces of my mirror into the trash heap of history. The last time I opened one of her emails was on a snowy afternoon. The letter was short, just one sentence. "Leo, today is my 35th birthday. You always used to make me longevity noodles. This year, I'm alone with a bowl of instant ramen. I've suddenly realized that without you and Noah, this home is colder than the Siberian tundra." I stared at the words for a long time. Then I replied to David. "David, please don't forward any more of her emails. Also, I need you to officially inform her that I have instructed my Swiss attorney to issue a restraining order. If she attempts to contact me again through any channel, I will pursue further legal action." After sending the email, I closed my laptop and walked to the window. Snowflakes were falling gently, painting the world a pure, pristine white. Down below, Vivian was building a large snowman with Noah. His laughter, like silver bells, carried up to me through the wind and snow. I watched them, a small smile forming on my lips. "Isabel, your remorse has come too late. You don't miss me. You miss the complete family that you yourself destroyed. Just when I thought the name William Cole would vanish from my world forever, a long-distance call from back home brought it roaring back. It was my best friend from college, Mike. "Leo, you'll never guess who I ran into today," Mike said, his voice sounding complicated. "Who?" "William Cole." My heart sank slightly. Mike continued, "He cornered me in a coffee shop and just started rambling. Said Isabel threw him out, that he's broke and has nowhere to go. He begged me to give him your contact info, said he wanted to apologize to you in person. Did you give it to him?" I asked, my voice calm. "Of course not." "No way in hell." Mike's voice rose. "I chewed him out and told him to get lost. What right does a guy like that have to ask for your forgiveness?" I smiled. "Good for you." But Mike's tone became hesitant. "He said some things about him, Isabel, and you. I think you might need to hear it." Through Mike's fragmented account, I finally pieced together the story of William's twisted motivations. It turned out his jealousy of me had started the very first day we set foot on campus. I came from a family of academics. Both my parents were university professors, and we were well off. William, on the other hand, came from a poor, small town. His father was a gambling addict and an alcoholic, his mother a long-suffering housewife. He had clawed his way into a top university through sheer grit, the only one from his entire village to do so. We were in the same class. He was jealous that I had an endless supply of designer clothes, the latest gadgets, and parents who would pick me up in a nice car on weekends. He was even more jealous of the effortless, breezy confidence I carried, something he could never emulate. It seemed I never had to worry about a thing. I won scholarships with ease. My design projects always earned the highest praise from professors, and even the most dazzling girl on campus, Isabel Vance, had eyes for me. He began to obsessively imitate me. Whatever I wore, he'd go to a wholesale market the next day to find a cheap knockoff. Whatever cologne I used, he'd save up his living expenses for months to buy a low-cost imitation. When I entered the curation competition, he signed up too, only to fail miserably. His mimicry was clumsy and pathetic, which only fueled his insecurity and jealousy. He felt life was unfair. Why was I born with everything while he had to struggle just to survive? This warped mindset peaked the day I proposed to Isabel. On that day, his jealousy curdled into a venomous hatred. He swore that one day he would take everything I had. After graduation, I supported Isabel as she started her business, while he used every trick in the book to get a job at her rival's company, becoming a corporate spy. He used his looks and cunning to steal trade secrets, enriching himself while secretly causing trouble for Isabel's company. Isabel never knew his true identity. She only saw a quiet guy from college who had turned out to be surprisingly bold and effective in the business world. Later, as I gradually stepped back from my career to focus on our family, William saw his chance. He quit his job and orchestrated a few chance encounters with Isabel. He showered her with attention, expressing boundless admiration and understanding. He told her that an outstanding woman like her deserved a partner who could fight by her side, not an artist husband who stayed at home, detached from the real world. His words struck a chord with Isabel's swelling ego at the time, and so they naturally got together. He said he never loved her. Mike sighed on the other end of the line. He only loved the idea of being Isabel Vance's husband, the thrill of defeating you. He said his life's goal was to replace you and then to destroy you. I listened quietly, feeling no anger, only a profound sadness. Sadness for William and for the man I used to be. When a person bases their entire self-worth on defeating someone else, whether in the name of love or hate, it's an absolute tragedy. "How is he now?" I asked. "What do you think?" After Isabel kicked him to the curb, he realized he was nothing. He has no real degree to speak of, no decent work experience. All these years, he poured all his energy into scheming against you and pleasing Isabel. Now he can't even find a respectable job. And Mike paused, a note of pity in his voice. I heard his gambling addict father racked up another huge debt, and the loan sharks are camped outside his tiny, run-down apartment every day. He's probably hit rock bottom. After hanging up, I walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful, snowy landscape. William's tragedy was of his own making. His original sin was a heart corroded by jealousy. I wouldn't pity him, and I would certainly never forgive him. He had hurt not just me, but my innocent son. But I wouldn't hate him either, because the man I was now stood at a height he could never hope to reach. My world was filled with sunlight, art, a son who loved me, and true friends. I only heard about William's final fate much later, from Mike. By then, I had held my third solo exhibition in Switzerland, and Noah was in the first grade. Mike told me that after being thrown out by Isabel, William went through a period of utter desperation. While Isabel didn't completely destroy him, she used her influence to make sure he was blacklisted from the entire finance and fashion industries. The friends he had made through his status as Isabel Vance's boyfriend vanished overnight. He finally understood that everything he thought he had was just an illusion. Without Isabel to cling to, he was nothing. To make matters worse, his gambling addict father somehow found out he'd been dumped by the rich heiress and, like a shark smelling blood, showed up at his tiny rented apartment. He wasn't there to see if his son was okay, he was there for money. You were with that lady boss, right? She must have given you a hefty breakup settlement. Hand it over. I owe a mountain of debt, and if I don't pay up, they're going to break my hands. William looked at the man who was technically his father, his face a mask of greed and shamelessness, and felt a wave of despair wash over him. What money? The bags and jewelry Isabel had given him were long sold off to pay for rent and daily expenses. I don't have any money, he cried. I don't have a single cent left. His father didn't believe him. He was convinced William was hiding a fortune, and the argument quickly escalated to violence. During a heated struggle, his father shoved him. He fell, and his head slammed hard against the corner of a table. Blood gushed from the wound. Staring at his son lying in a pool of blood, the man felt not an ounce of remorse. Mike finished the story with a heavy sigh. It's karma, man. What goes around comes around. I listened in silence, feeling no sense of satisfaction, only a detached indifference. William chose his own end. When he decided to build a life on lies and manipulation, he should have known that one day he would be consumed by his own desires. His entire life was spent envying me, imitating me, trying to replace me, but he never once tried to become himself. He thought being Isabel's partner was the ultimate prize, but he never understood that for a person without an independent soul, another person can never be a savior. Someone can be the icing on your cake, but they can never be your lifeline. Took me 7 years and a broken heart to learn that lesson. William, it seemed, would have the rest of his life to figure it out. Time flew. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. In those 2 years, my life changed completely. My studio, The Vista, became a well-known platform for contemporary art in Europe, and my exhibitions were featured on the covers of international art magazines. My own jewelry design brand, J. Boda, gained a following among European elites. I was no longer anyone's accessory, I had become my own source of light. My relationship with Vivian also deepened naturally over time. She understood me, respected me, and supported all my decisions. She would join me for 4 a.m. viewings at art galleries and quietly make me a bowl of hot noodle soup when I hit a creative block. She gave me a sense of stability and security that Isabel never could. Noah was now 7, a smart, well-behaved, and slightly mischievous little boy. He saw Vivian as his closest family. Though he knew she wasn't his biological mother, in his heart Vivian had long since replaced the vague, photo-only image of mom. I thought my life would continue on this peaceful, beautiful path forever. But then, one day, Isabel's appearance shattered the tranquility. It was a sunny winter afternoon. Vivian's private museum was hosting a charity exhibition featuring a series of works Noah and I had created together. The event was a success, with guests praising the sense of rebirth and strength in my art. Just as the exhibition was ending and I was about to leave with Vivian and Noah, a familiar yet strange figure appeared at the museum entrance. It was her, Isabel. She had changed a lot in 2 years. The impeccably dressed, ever-composed business queen was now gaunt and haggard. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her face etched with exhaustion. Her eyes were sunken and bloodshot, She had lost a lot of weight, her custom-tailored suit hung loosely on her frame. Time had finally carved its indelible marks upon her. She walked through the crowd, heading straight for me. The other guests watched this sudden, formidable Eastern woman with curiosity. Vivian instinctively moved to shield Noah behind her. Isabel stopped 3 feet away from me. Her gaze was glued to me, then it moved past me to Noah. Her eyes were a storm of shock, pain, regret, and a fragile, near desperate vulnerability I couldn't quite decipher. "Leo," she began, her voice as raw as sandpaper. "I finally found you." I looked at her, my heart perfectly calm. There was no hate, no love, just the feeling of looking at a complete stranger who had nothing to do with my life. "Ms. Vance," I said, my tone distant and polite, "I believe there is nothing left for us to say to each other." "No, there is," she said, taking an agitated step forward. "Leo, please let me explain. The thing with William was my fault. I was out of my mind. I was an idiot. I've already made him pay the price. There hasn't been a single day in these past 2 years that I haven't thought about you and Noah." "That's enough," I interrupted. "Your affairs have nothing to do with me. We are divorced." "But Noah," her desperate gaze fell on him. "He's my son. You can't take away my right to be a mother." "A mother?" I let out a cold laugh, as if I'd heard the world's greatest joke. "Ms. Vance, you seem to have forgotten that you personally signed a document stating you voluntarily relinquish all custody. It's in black and white, legally binding." My words were like daggers, stabbing into her heart once again. The color drained from her face. She closed her eyes in pain, her body trembling slightly. When she opened them again, the once proud, invincible woman did something that shocked everyone present. She fell to her knees before me. "Leo," she pleaded, looking up, her once fiery eyes now filled with tears. "I'm begging you, forgive me. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I'm willing to give up everything, my company, my fortune. I don't want any of it. I just want to see Noah, to talk to him, even just once." Her voice was a broken, humble plea. A collective gasp went through the remaining crowd. Everyone was stunned by the dramatic scene. I looked down at the woman kneeling before me, and my heart felt nothing. Belated affection is cheaper than dirt. And her affection was nothing more than a low-cost payment for her own mistakes. I ignored her, crouching down to pull Noah, who had been startled by the scene, into a tight hug. The air outside the museum grew heavy and stagnant from the sudden confrontation. Sunlight reflected off the snow on the Alps, a blinding glare that made it hard to see. Isabel remained kneeling on the cold stone steps. The hard, sharp edges of the marble pressed into her knees, but she seemed to feel no pain. Her entire being was focused into her red, pleading eyes, locked on me and the child in my arms. The onlookers had tactfully dispersed, leaving only a few museum staff members standing at a distance, unsure of what to do. Vivian stood by my side, her slender hand resting gently on my shoulder, a silent offering of strength. Her presence was a calm harbor, instantly steadying my own turbulent heart. I held Noah, whispering reassurances. The little guy was clearly frightened by the tense scene. He buried his face in my neck, his small hands clinging tightly to me. "Daddy, who is that person? Why is she kneeling?" Noah whispered in my ear, his voice small and innocent. My heart stung. How could I answer him? Tell him this was the biological mother who had been absent for 2 years, now suddenly appearing to claim him back? Couldn't. I wouldn't let Isabel's mistakes become Noah's punishment. As I was trying to figure out what to say, Isabel spoke again, her voice choked with sobs.
"Noah, I'm Mommy."
"Noah, don't you remember Mommy?" She tried to crawl forward on her knees to get closer, but Vivian stepped forward, subtly blocking her path. "Ms. Vance," Vivian's voice was gentle but firm, "please calm down. You're frightening the child." Isabel looked up, her bloodshot eyes finally focusing on the woman standing beside me. A flash of hostility and jealousy ignited in her gaze. "Who are you? This has nothing to do with you. This is our family business," she shrieked. "Family business?" Vivian smiled faintly. The smile was warm, yet it carried the sharp, confident air of someone in charge. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Ms. Vance. Leo and Noah are my family now. Their business is my business. Your family?" Isabel scoffed as if she'd heard the world's biggest joke. She pointed at Vivian, then at me, her voice trembling with agitation. "Leo, you moved on that fast? You left me, schemed to take my son away, all for her?" Her accusation was absurd and laughable. I looked her directly in the eyes, my gaze as cold as the snow under our feet. "Isabel, save your pathetic, self-serving logic. I didn't leave you for anyone else. I left you because you are not worthy. Not worthy." The words were like 3 hard slaps across Isabel's face. She froze, the blood draining from her cheeks. She had probably never imagined that one day she would hear such a final, damning judgment from the man who had once been so devoted to her. Just then, a clear, slightly puzzled voice broke the tense silence. Noah peeked out from my arms. He looked at the kneeling Isabel, then at Vivian standing in front of him. Then, he did something that stunned everyone present and shattered Isabel's world. He wriggled out of my embrace, ran to Vivian's side, and reached up to naturally take her hand. He tilted his head back, looked up at her, and in fluent, affectionate Mandarin, called out clearly, "Mommy." Then he turned to the woman who was now frozen in place, blinked his big, dark eyes, and said in a polite, slightly distant tone, "Hello, ma'am." Isabel's pupils dilated. The color vanished from her face, and her lips trembled, but no words came out. She could never have dreamed that her son, the son she had schemed and searched for so desperately, would, upon seeing her for the first time, not run into her arms, but call another woman the name she had longed to hear for 2 years. It took a long moment for her to snap out of her nightmare. She looked up, her bloodshot eyes fixated on me, filled with a wild, desperate accusation. "Leo Hayes, what did you do to him?" She screamed, her voice distorted by rage and pain. "How could you let him call someone else mommy? How dare you? I am his biological mother. You're brainwashing him. You're turning him against me. You're evil." Her accusations rained down on me like a torrent of filth. The Leo of 2 years ago might have been angered by her words, might have felt the need to argue. But now, looking at her face, made ugly by jealousy, I felt nothing but a calm, unwavering indifference. You cannot speak of ice to a summer insect. What right did a person who had never fulfilled the duties of a mother have to talk about a mother-child relationship? I didn't answer her. I didn't even spare her an extra glance. I just knelt down, gently smoothed Noah's wind-tousled hair, and said, "Noah, let's go home. Mommy made your favorite mac and cheese." My voice was soft, but loud enough for everyone to hear. I intentionally said mommy with natural ease. It was my stance and my final verdict. Noah cheered happily and nodded. I stood up and took Noah's other hand. Vivian naturally held his other side. The 3 of us formed a solid, impenetrable triangle. We turned to leave. "Don't you go." Isabel's desperate roar came from behind us. She scrambled up from the ground and charged at us like a cornered beast, trying to grab Noah. "Noah, I'm your mother. Look at me. I'm your mother." Museum security guards rushed over, grabbing the out-of-control Isabel by each arm. "Let go of me. Let me go." Isabel struggled wildly, but it was no use. "Leo Hayes, you can't do this to me. You can't take my son." I stopped and turned back. It was the last time I would ever truly look at her. I saw her, restrained by the guards, a pathetic mess. I saw the face I once adored, now twisted into a mask of madness and fury. My eyes held no hatred, no resentment, not even a shred of pity. There was only a complete, cold, and superior indifference, as if I were looking at a hysterical stranger on the street, whose antics failed to arouse any interest. Then, I turned to Vivian and gave her a reassuring, apologetic smile, as if to say, "Sorry you had to see that." Vivian returned a gentle, comforting look. We shared a smile, a silent understanding passing between us. Then, holding Noah's hand, I walked through the museum's side door without a single look back. That confrontation at the foot of the snowy mountains was the last time Isabel and I ever crossed paths. After that day, she never appeared in my life again. I heard later that she sat outside the museum in a daze for the entire afternoon, only being forcibly taken away by her assistant after nightfall. When she returned to the country, she completely fell apart. She began drinking even more heavily, using alcohol to numb the pain. She stopped going to the office, handing over all responsibilities to her vice president. She locked herself in that cavernous villa, a place filled with the ghosts of me and Noah, and drowned herself day after day in regret and self-torment. The business world is a battlefield, ever-changing. A company that loses its leader is like a ship that loses its rudder, quickly losing its way in the turbulent seas. Due to a series of aggressive, misguided investment decisions she had made, coupled with her subsequent neglect, Isabel's company soon faced a massive financial crisis. The once mighty business empire teetered on the brink of bankruptcy within a year. She herself, suffering from chronic alcoholism and severe depression, was eventually admitted to a private sanatorium by her family. Mike told me all this during a video call, treating it like gossip. I listened quietly, my heart unruffled. "Leo, don't you feel a little vindicated?" Mike asked cautiously. I shook my head and smiled. "Mike, when you still care about who wins or loses a war, it means you're still on the battlefield." Me? I retired a long time ago. It was true. Her world, whether in splendor or ruin, had nothing to do with me anymore. I ended the call and walked to the window. It was a bright afternoon. Summer in Switzerland was as beautiful as a painting. The garden was lush and green, blooming with flowers. Noah and Vivian were on the lawn, engrossed in building a giant Lego castle. The sun cast a golden halo around them. "Daddy, come look. Our castle just needs a roof." Noah saw me and waved excitedly. I smiled and walked over, crouching down to place the final red block on the castle's spire. "There, it's finished." Noah cheered, throwing his arms around my neck and planting a big kiss on my cheek. Vivian smiled and wrapped her long arms around me, drawing me into a warm embrace. She whispered in my ear, in her uniquely gentle voice, "Our castle needs a king. Leo Hayes, will you marry me?" There were no flowers, no ring, just the simplest, most sincere question. I looked into her eyes, which were filled with starlight and tenderness. I saw the reflection of a man smiling with pure happiness, and I nodded with all my heart. I once thought my world had been reduced to ruins by a failed marriage. But now I know that some endings are not conclusions but new beginnings. Only by completely letting go of the wrong person can you finally meet the right one. I looked at the woman I loved, at our wonderful son, at the unbreakable castle we had built together, and I felt a sense of peace and wholeness I had never known before. The distant ruins had long been swept away by the winds of time, and I had finally found my own, everlasting freedom.